And thank you to Russell, our Zoom usher. Thank you to our in-person ushers, Lori and Dave. I have a vivid memory of New Year's Eve, 1976. Probably nobody else here remembers that, but I remember it. I was 9 years old, and typically my parents would go out to have a gathering with their friends, but that year one of my parents was nursing a flu. I remember it was the new year, and it was also a bicentennial year, something that never happened before. At an early age, I became very interested in history and current events. In school, when a teacher told us to go and ask people about their memory about a recent historical event, I would race home to my parents. So one day would be, go and ask your parents if they remember where they were when they heard that John F. Kennedy was assassinated. Ask your grandparents where they were when they heard about Pearl Harbor, or when if they heard about Orson Welles' radio program, War of the Worlds. I became really interested in genealogical interviews. The idea that people could tell me about how they had experienced these events as part of a broad community was kind of thrilling. My parents were both rather patriotic, and these events were retold to me from their perspective as events that were formative to their patriotism, their belonging to a nation that went through amazing events together. The Great Depression, VE Day, VJ Day, those are part of my parents' experience. That New Year's Eve, 49 years ago, was marking 200 years from the Declaration of Independence. We had gone to Philadelphia the previous summer, and so I just happened to have a three-corner hat ready for the event. It was also an election year. Our social studies teacher assigned 2 students to study, research the candidates, and prepare to present to the classroom a debate. The teacher then polled the students to ask them which candidate they would vote for. Jimmy Carter was the choice of our 5th grade class. I don't have a memory of this, but I decided to write him to let him know. I thought he needed to know that 5th graders in Staten Island at a Catholic parochial school supported him. What I do remember is receiving a postcard with his picture on it. And then after the election, a big packet of information about the inauguration and related events. My parents had no interest in going to any of these. They voted for the other guy. I really didn't know much about the issues of the day or the promises the candidates had made. But I had this emerging interest in history and social movements. So I didn't have a spiel for the election about who they should vote for. I didn't persuade anyone about that. But it felt like a really important year and a really important event. There was a good deal of pride that I felt for my country, its history, and its progress. Needless to say, with time and experience, that perspective has changed, and recent history has changed the tone, the political climate, and those good feelings. With all the retrospectives of Jimmy Carter this week, a few things I thought were worth mentioning. He finished his term proud that no missiles were fired and no bombs were dropped. He continued the policy of his Republican predecessors to turn down the heat in relations with the Soviet Union and with China. He also said that he wanted to turn away from the imperial trappings of the modern presidency. He sold the presidential yacht. He held his own umbrella. He carried his own bag. And he walked the route from his inauguration instead of waving from the back of a limousine. He took his oath not as James Earl, but as Jimmy. He not only wanted to discontinue the imperial trappings of the presidency, he wanted to turn the page. He wanted to decolonize, to reverse America's role in the world. And he succeeded in achieving a very difficult proposal, which was to return the Panama Canal Zone to Panama. In 1976, Carter emerged from obscurity to run for president. People said, "Jimmy who?" He was introduced to us as a peanut farmer, but he had a distinguished career, graduating from Annapolis in 1946. No one in his family had graduated from high school, but he went to graduate and become a nuclear engineer and was put in command of a nuclear sub. He made an impression as governor of Georgia. He replaced a virulent racist and segregationist named Lester Maddox. In his inaugural as governor in Atlanta, he said the time for racial discrimination is over. While his predecessor, Lester Maddox, would not grant state employees the day off to go to Martin Luther King Jr.'s funeral, which was just 3 years before, Carter, on coming into office, hung King's portrait in the State House. He did many things while he was governor. He consolidated more than 200 government offices down to 20 and backed austerity measures to save money while also supporting new social programs, including equalizing aid to poor and wealthy schools, prison reform, and early childhood development programs. Then, as president, Carter appointed more women, more Black Americans, and more Jewish Americans to official positions and judgeships than all of his 38 predecessors combined. To the frustration of his White House advisors, he made decisions not based on what could be gained politically, but on doing what was right. He made decisions disregarding advice about what would get him reelected, and the proof of that was his loss in 1980. As governor, he championed civil rights. As president, he championed human rights. During his 1976 campaign, Carter told audiences, "I will never tell a lie. I'll never make a misleading statement. I'll never betray the trust of those who have confidence in me, and I will never avoid a controversial issue." No one could say he did anything less. On Sunday morning, we put aside political activities. We want to be a purple church. We don't want to be a church for one political party. There's no place for imposing partisan politics on Sunday morning. But there is a place for a conversation about important moral issues of the day and the ethics of public priorities and social issues. In today's reading, we hear about a king who was frightened by the news about a baby who was born under an auspicious star. We didn't read further on to hear about the atrocity he unleashed and how the Holy Family had to flee to Egypt. The Bible has many stories about political leaders: pharaohs, Caesars, foreign generals, queens, colonial rulers. All of these stories have a message about how these leaders should behave. All the kings of ancient Israel and Judah had prophets, people who could speak frankly and directly to these powerful people. The prophets spoke a prophetic word to hold the mighty to account. These were people who did not give political advice, they gave moral guidance. Last month, we heard Jesus' mother proclaim the song we call the Magnificat. God, Mary sang, has scattered the proud in the thoughts of their hearts and brought down the powerful from their thrones and lifted up the lowly. Jesus would follow in this way of envisioning a future reversal. Jesus repeatedly spoke about the ancient prophets and the importance of their role in society. Jesus demonstrated a strong, urgent concern for people abused by the powerful, and strong words against leaders, especially religious leaders, who were guilty of flattering the high and mighty, who were complicit or themselves guilty of hypocrisy or oppression. We conclude our Sunday worship by saying, "Go in peace," or sometimes we say, "Prepare the way." Today we're going to say, "Live in hope." Peace is not a passive thing. It's an active thing. Hope is not an imaginary thing. Someone once talked about a common misconception about hope, that it is delicate, that it is fragile, that it is demure. But it is not. Hope has scraped knuckles and scratches from engaging in battle to carry hope forward and to fight off all who would squash hope. Too often we hear religious voices cozying up to the influential and powerful, serving the rich with words sanctioning their activities. and defending their actions. When we go from here, this morning, each Sunday we go from here, we are commissioned to carry hope forward, to defend it from those who would snuff it out. We leave here blessed in order to go forward in peace, not to recline in a peace that is passive and silent, but to create peace by advancing a more just and fair society. As Dorothy Day said, peace begins when the hungry are fed. We go to love and serve the Lord by doing justice and loving kindness and walking humbly with our God. We as a society, we as people of God, need to advance the virtue of humility and the work of kindness and the work of community. So I remember that spirit of 76. It's hope, not 1976, not 1776. And it's hope for a better world, a more equal society, a place to be proud of. We each need to carry forward that vision of a shining city on a hill, a beloved community, a community where people feel connected to mutual relationships that are cherished and nurtured. All creation sings your praise. Sun, moon, and stars reflect your glory. With disciples and followers, we marvel at the reign of God come near. Along with the Magi, we follow your signs and find you in a humble and surprising place. With saints through the ages, we ponder the mystery of Christ dying and rising. Christ is the one who was handed over to a death he freely accepted in order to destroy death. He took bread. He gave thanks. He broke the bread and he gave it to his disciples, saying, "Take and eat. This is my body, which will be given for you." In the same way, he took the cup and he gave thanks, and he gave the cup for all to drink, saying, "This cup is the new covenant in my blood. It will be shed for you and for all people for the forgiveness of sins. Do this in remembrance of me." May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord's face shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord look upon you with mercy and grant you peace.